This is a preview of one of our Patreon bonus episodes. If you like what you hear, you can get access to all of our bonus episodes by supporting us on Patreon at the $1 tier. Why, hello there. Welcome to a very special episode of Spoilers Intended. This is a bonus Patreon episode. If we're talking this week about, I'll say general things Gundam related.
Yeah.
How to get into it, what it is.
What is Gundam?
Yeah,
How
what
do I
is
get
Gundam?
into it?
Yeah, because we've reviewed 2 episodes now.
Is it safe for my children?
Mostly?
Ooh,
I don't know.
Some of it's very kid-friendly. It's very much so aimed at kids.
But before that, we have to give a huge shout-out to all of our patrons who support us and make the episodes like these possible, keep the lights on, hosting things and fees
Hosting
and whatnot.
fees, yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. You make this possible, make it feasible for us to constantly be churning out episodes.
Yeah, and we get to talk about really fun things that we're all really passionate about. Gundam is definitely one of the things that I'm probably most passionate about.
In this room, yes.
Which is a bit of an understatement. But this is kind of one of those episodes that I've wanted to do for a while because if I can share my passion with someone else, then I'm so happy for it.
So Andrew's real goal here is he wants to get more people interested in Gundam and thus interested in Gunpla, and they can have more people over to his house to build Gunpla together. So he can take a photo that he posts on the subreddit for Gunpla, and he makes all of Reddit sad because they all want to know why they don't have friends.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a thing that's happened not once, but twice.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get really into the nitty-gritty, because a lot of this, if you're very unfamiliar with Gundam as a whole, is going to sound very similar to like conspiracy theory levels of like intertwining timelines,
drawing red lines from one thing to the next to the next. Yeah.
So we will do our best to keep this as compartmentalized as possible.
Yeah.
So we have the episode kind of split up into basically first tier recommendations if you're very unfamiliar with the format or the show. Or the franchise, and then kind of go from there. Where to get started, go from there.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about Gunpla, which is just Gundam Plastic Model. It's just Gunpla for short.
It's basically just building models.
Yes.
It's literally
Gundam
what Gundam is made to make money off of is selling
off,
toys to kids, right?
Maybe back up and say, what is a Gundam?
Okay, so Gundam...
It's a Gundam!
Okay, so a Gundam is a giant, about 19-meter tall robot.
For Americans, what does that mean?
I don't know. Pacific Rim?
40 feet, 40 to... So they typically...
I see that. It's about 60 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, they land anywhere from, I think, at the shortest to like mid-40s up to pushing 70 feet, probably.
Yeah,
when you start talking size.
So it's giant robot anime.
Yeah. So giant robots that are piloted by individuals.
Yeah.
And generally... It takes place throughout a war drama style show, and there's a whole lot of ifs, ands, or buts in here because there's multiple timelines. It can get very hairy. But
separate
basically,
universes.
Yeah. So I'm just going to read a general synopsis, which I found on the Mobile Suit Gundam wiki, which was the first one. So here we go. Also known as the first Gundam, Gundam 0079, or simply Gundam 79. Is an anime television series produced and animated by Nippon Sunrise, created and directed by Yoshiyuki Tomino. It premiered in Japan on Nagoya Broadcasting and is affiliated with ANN Networks in 1979.
Yes, this came out a long
time ago.
Yeah.
And it lasted until January 26, 1980, spanning 43 episodes when it was unfortunately canceled. So this was actually one of the only mainline Gundam series that didn't get 50 episodes.
It didn't get to finish.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it was the first Gundam series, which has subsequently been adapted into numerous sequels and spin-offs set in a futuristic calendar called Universal Century 0079. Go figure, 1979 is when he started it.
Yeah,
there we go. The plot focuses on the war between the Principality of Zeon and the Earth Federation, with the latter, Earth Federation, unveiling a new giant robot known as the RX-78-2 Gundam. There's a lot of numbers and stuff in there.
It also is really funny how it's like, this is 0079. So here's the RX-78. Guys, you couldn't just line this up and be like, it's 79. The RX-79.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the series started in 78, but it didn't release till 79.
When the mobile suit, this is getting already into nitty gritty. When the mobile suit was designed,
it was 1978.
It was 0078 when it was actually designed, and then
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're just really determined to release this and name it after the same year it's released.
And so Gundam was not the first giant robot anime.
No, not at all.
Not at
but
all.
it was definitely before like Voltron, and it was before. Cause I think Voltron was like early 80s, right?
Okay, so basically, up until 1979, there was the super robot genre, which is like Astro Boy, Mazinger, Elgheim, like basically all of these where it's basically superheroes that are just in giant robots, whether they're piloted by one or they're just a giant robot.
Just for reference, Voltron, which a lot of people in the U.S. will be familiar with, is 1984.
And what Tomino wanted to do was basically create a more realistic and a more grounded kind of super robot show, in the sense of like he wanted to basically put teenage pilots and the ramifications of what that actually would be into these war drama scenarios.
Right.
Of like, hey, we're, like these kids essentially are killing people and they have to come to terms with this and what that means of whenever, a loved one from, of theirs dies or whatever.
Yeah.
And he wanted to face the
wartime
reality.
drama of like, the realities of it.
Well, it's interesting because the show really, makes its money by selling robot toys to kids, essentially, while preaching a message of war is bad, right? The horrors of war. For the vast majority of any, even getting out of Universal Century, but most Gundam shows tend to focus on the horrors of war.
Yeah. So, basically unveiling a new giant robot known as the RX-78-2 Gundam, piloted by teenage civilian mechanic Amuro Ray. And despite initial low ratings that caused the series cancellation, the popularity of Gundam saw a boost from the introduction of Bandai's Gunpla models, Gundam plastic models, just Gunpla for short, in 1980, so a year after the show aired, and from reruns and theatrical releases of the anime, leading to the creation of a prolific and lucrative media and toy franchise. The series is famous for revolutionizing the giant robot genre into the real robot genre, so realistic. A lot more like heavy kind of overtones and tropes and beats.
A little more grounded is a loose word, but like less superhero-y.
Yes,
more,
definitely.
So the series is famous for revolutionizing giant robot genre due to the handling of mobile suits as weapons of war, as well as the portrayal of their pilots as ordinary soldiers. This aspect contrasted with the previous style of portraying hero pilots and their giant superhero robots.
Yeah.
So, like, when I say, like, superhero robots, they have, I'll say, like, energy. And they can just kind of, like, channel that into, like, super attacks and all these other kind of things where, like, the RX-78 doesn't have any of that.
It runs out of ammo. It has fuel.
Well, and another contrast is probably that like the super robot stuff is like there's just one of them. It's the one Voltron. You know what I mean? Whereas like there's conceivably
there are multiple mobile suits, and most of the time there's always going to be one unique one, which is the Gundam from each series. The main character pilots. But there are also going to be multiple other Gundams, especially in other shows like the Mess Team, which we actually have reviewed on the podcast before.
Yes.
So if you haven't listened to that one, go check it out. It's a great intro, which we'll kind of get into here in a second.
And I wasn't in that episode, but here's my review. It's great. Check it out.
There's one caveat, but that's it.
So there's
one pretty big caveat.
So that's kind of the general gist of Gundam, of kind of like what you're getting into. It is a war drama that is couched with giant robots, so it is relatively unrealistic in that sense, but it does talk about and confront very realistic things of what can happen in actual war.
You'll have PTSD.
Oh, yes.
Absolute atrocities, all kinds of things.
Like if anything that has happened in real war will happen in this show at some point in time. And there are definitely a lot of very adult-themed things that show up in the sense of it can be very emotional. Yeah. It's not always sunshine and rainbows, and that's kind of the whole point of the show.
Right. Yeah.
So just to help out maybe anyone who hasn't been made crystal clear yet, maybe. So within the show, you have mobile suits. So that's just your generic robots. So we'll have all kinds of generic grunt suits, right?
And these suits are still like 60 foot tall.
They're still big
these are
boys.
giant robots.
They're just piloted by less skilled pilots, more likely just to be blown up on the sidelines, et cetera, et cetera.
In the scheme of a battle, it'd be like having tanks.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, when you say mobile suit, you're like saying cars. Whereas when you say Gundam, you're saying like Ferrari.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of the king of whatever episode that is typically. There's usually only one. Sometimes there's more just because they dip into like super team stuff or whatever.
Yeah, like Super Sentai.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Either anytime something is labeled as a Gundam, it is the best mobile suit.
Generally,
is the idea.
It's the experimental prototype.
Yeah.
Probably difficult to control or learn or master, but the ones it is, it's better than your typical suits.
Because before I got into the series at all, like I just thought
everything
all
was
robots were Gundams.
Hey, you went full mom mode. Oh, it's all a Nintendo.
Yeah, exactly. And then I remember when I started watching, I was like, oh, just the cool ones are Gundams.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's false, but anyway.
Well, yeah, very true. Yeah. That's not accurate either.
And typically, when you look at the head styling of Gundams, it's modeled stylistically in a very like a samurai way.
It is. So yeah, Tomino pulled a lot of his motifs for the design of the mecha throughout the series from like old samurais and
like samurai armor, like the
like the helmets.
You see like what they call the V-fins, with the big spray right on the forehead, which matches kind of like the antlers and stuff that samurai would have on their helmet.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really fun stuff, but before we really get into like I'll say nitty gritty about like what mobile suit is cool and that kind of thing, which we probably won't hear.
RX-79 or 93.
You're wrong. But so we're gonna go. This is gonna be the first tier. So this is the intro into everything Gundam that you could possibly.
So this is starter. Baby's first Gundam.
You've never seen Gundam, but you've probably seen a little anime.
Yeah,
come on in.
So these are gonna be shows that you can get right into with little to no explanation. And then go from there. And then once you get through these series, if you want more, then we have some more tiers that you can kind of go through.
Yeah.
So I kind of cherry picked 4 different shows here that I think would be really good for someone that is not versed with the show and the concept in general. So obviously 0079, which is the original one from 1979.
Yeah.
I think that it's a good starting place.
Okay.
However, it is 1979 animation.
Right.
And it can be the dub for the show is not the best.
It's really rough.
Right.
However, it has everything that most of the series has been built, or the franchise has been built on from this point.
So it's like the foundation that you need to watch it before. So now, would you recommend somebody watching the show itself or the movie?
So there are 2 different options here, and if you really want to just deep dive into the show or the franchise in general, the original show, all 43 episodes are available on Crunchyroll and Funimation in sub and dub.
Okay.
All 43 episodes, they're not bad to watch. However, I would generally recommend the compilation films are a superior way to watch the first series.
At least to get the full complete story, you would dodge kind of some filler bloat stuff.
Yeah.
And also you avoid most of the bad animation because the show is produced on a really tight budget and a really tight schedule, and it shows at times.
Yeah, and the compilation films, they did update a lot of the animation. It's still 1981 when these films came out. So there's definitely going to be, it's still old animation.
Yeah.
The dub is still not the best.
Right.
However, all 3 films are available on Netflix. And sub and dub, it's just Mobile Suit Gundam, the movie.
And so it's basically the first movie covers like what? Like 15 episodes or something?
15 to 20-ish.
And then the second one, same. So just split it up into 3 parts. And So this is how I watched those when I started to get into it. And I recommend it highly. It was easy to follow.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely has a weird structure compared to like a normal like 3-act movie.
It does,
right? Because it is a compilation of a show,
a bunch of episodes.
Yeah, you can tell it wasn't made as a movie on its own.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
but I definitely think this is a really good way to get into the I'll say the Universal Century timeline, and I'll get to those here in a second.
Yeah,
because there are multiple timelines, and this is where it gets kind of hairy and conspiracy theory level,
and also confusing for people who are looking at it, like, well, so does this robot ever fight that robot? And it's like, well, no, they would never cross paths.
Yeah.
So just for reference, so the Universal Century timeline is pretty much the accepted, like the main timeline.
It is.
Right? And most other things that are a different timeline are part of like kind of a spin-off is the way to think of it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Or an alternate retelling of the original timeline in certain cases.
Yeah.
So I have, 0079 original 1 compilation films. I really think those Thanks for listening to this preview of one of our Patreon bonus episodes. If you like what you heard, you can hear the rest of this episode and get access to all of our other bonus episodes for just $1. Go to patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast.